Hello everyone and welcome in this quick technical video recording. This time I'm going to try to give some indication on what I'm doing to try to debug the application that I built in Emscripten here. In case you've seen the latest video on this was Terrain 6, and I mentioned that there was an issue, a crash that will occur at some point, and actually the recording I did got this crash at some point, and I have been trying to investigate this pretty deeply, and now I would like to give some indication on this. The thing is, I'm using the console here and trying to see what kind of error I would get, and at some point I was getting an error which was always in the same function, so it was consistently happening in the same function. But I decided to update the code accordingly, and where was that actually? It was in the tile simpler initially, I think. Yeah, I started to have the sub function in the function where I had the problem, and point is, every time I was changing something, the error was moved to another location here on the execution. So yeah, I was a bit confused with that, and eventually I ended up with an error occurring even when I was just trying to create a simple string, an std string. So this really didn't make sense at all. So at some point then I decided to go very deep, and I also added here the support for this Sanitize address feature, and in fact I have that both as a compilation flag when I'm using that now. I mean, normally I would use O3, but I was trying here with O0 completely, and yeah, I specify that as a compilation flag and also as a link flag for Emscripten. So what's going to be used here is O0 and also those additional flags. And with this, I eventually got this kind of report from the console when I was able to reproduce the error. And at first this was a bit intimidating, and I was not really understanding all this, but if you take the time to read this carefully, that's actually very useful. The error reported here is if used after 3, which if you, well, I guess this means that you were allocating something on the heap and then you were freeing that object, but you were still using a pointer to that object afterwards. So yeah, then what is this? This is actually the summary of where you have the problem, and then you have some additional detail. You have an indication that your object here was freed in your freed T0, and this is a stack trace indicating that, okay, at some point I have a scene and I'm trying to set the camera controller. When I do that, I'm assigning a new camera controller to a reference counted a pointer, which means I'm going to unreference the previous camera controller, and in fact the previous camera controller was this free fly camera controller. And in my application here, I know that at some point I'm going to replace this free fly camera controller with the free planet controller. I think that's the name I'm using for this one. Free planet, yeah. So this is a different camera controller. And yeah, so this code actually makes sense. I'm going to replace a default, and that default controller was first assigned allocated here. When you first create a scene, then you're going to call create camera controller, and that would produce this free fly camera controller object. And so yeah, in the end it's restating that the problem is you have this location indicated, and in there you have this where you apparently use some resource which was already freed, and this actually is a function we have in this class, and this part here indicate that you in fact calling a lambda which is declared in this function. So if I move to this location and then I go to, what is this? It's a connect under. I see that yes, indeed, I am defining some event handlers, which is going to use this. And so I know that I'm supposed to destroy those event handlers when I'm releasing this camera controller. So I was recovering a pointer on those handlers and eventually putting that in this list handlers. And what was already available in the code was this part. Normally when I delete the FreeFly camera controller, I would disconnect the handlers. And yeah, I would expect this to work just fine, but it's not the case. So I added this check, and in fact this was failing. And so from this point I could then figure out that okay, there's something wrong going on in this disconnect handler, which is not disconnecting anything. And the only reason I could think about is this: the window pointer is set to 0. But yeah, why that? And from this point you keep investigating further and you realize that okay, when I'm doing the connection of the handlers here sorry, I was using this, but I was simply not assigning the window. So the pointer here was always a null pointer. In fact, I also changed this part. So this is the reason why you would actually still be able to create the handlers, but then they would never be disconnected here. And that's it. So yeah, when you activate all this address sanitizer and all, everything is getting super slow. So you see that the frame rate is very low, but that's definitely a very powerful tool. So I will definitely keep that in mind in case I can reproduce other error like this one. Okay, so this is it. I hope you learned something here, and if you have any question, just let me know in the comments. Thank you very much. See you next time. Bye.